Hello, my name is MJaded and I love movies, midnight snacking, and masochism. Whilst I haven't managed to work midnight snacking into this yet, I have managed to combine two of those loves in the run-up to this year's Oscars. Or maybe just after this year's Oscars. Resident Evil 9's really good, y'all. While I won't really consider myself an Oscar head, I do think they're interesting as a sort of window into how Hollywood views itself.
I'm the king of the world!
I also thought this would be a good opportunity to watch some movies, I wouldn't usually watch. So I watched some movies that were really good. And I watched some movies that reminded me why I'm a masochist. So I watched every Oscar-nominated movie of 2025 that's feature-length and fictional. And I didn't include the best song because I forgot about it. For section 1, we have The Crafties. These are the films that just kind of got some craft nominations. There were a lot of films in here that I wouldn't usually watch, so that was actually quite enlightening for me. I got to see some things that surprised me, and some things that didn't.
Dr. Henry Loomis, this is Zora Bennett, our mission specialist.
As an example of that, we start off with Jurassic World Rebirth. Oh no. Sometimes you start a project and you think it's going to be a great idea, and then you have to watch Jurassic World Rebirth. This was nominated for Best Visual Effects, which I actually thought was, kind of weird, strangely. When I was watching the film, I was really shocked by how mediocre I found the special effects. They were good, sure, but they were nothing special, nothing very interesting. I guess maybe that's what the Oscars are looking for, is to sort of give things that are just good technical craft, but I don't know. The actual plot of this film isn't really anything to write home about. We feature sort of two intersecting storylines, which is Scarlett Johansson and Mahershala Ali, and they are mercenaries who are going into a Jurassic Park island to find a dinosaur that's like a cure for all disease or something.
Sorry, what mission?
Meanwhile, they run into this family, and the family are out sailing in dinosaur waters, like known area where dinosaurs live, and kill people. You may ask why, but the film doesn't really feel the need to explain that.
If those kids could read, they'd be very upset.
So these two storylines intersect, they both end up on the island, they're trying to survive, and I think it really wastes the potential of this storyline because it doesn't intermingle these two previously separate groups. There's no sort of usage of that to create drama. It's just like the mercenaries are over here, they're climbing a wall or whatever, and the family's over here, and the dad doesn't like the daughter's boyfriend, but he learns to respect him because he's standing up for his daughter and killing dinosaurs and stuff or whatever. I don't know, it didn't really do anything for me. As someone who, really loves the original Jurassic Park, not that that makes me special, a lot of people do, but I really appreciate the magic of that first Jurassic Park movie, and I feel like none of the sequels have ever really managed to capture it, but this might be the worst example of all. There's no sort of majesty or grandeur to the dinosaurs. They're kind of treated as boring, as if they'd gone to an island full of cats. Although actually an island full of cats would be great. I'd love to go there. So if anyone knows one and could hook a girl up, then give me a shout. Point still stands. This movie kind of did nothing for me. Made me question if this was even a good idea to do. And didn't really do anything of any worth. Next up, we have Kokuho. This is a Japanese film that was nominated for Best Makeup and Hairstyling. I actually think this film also really should have been up for best costuming. The costumes in this film are absolutely spectacular. It's a film about an onigata performer, which is sort of a subsection of kabuki performer, and that is a male who mainly plays female characters, because for a long time women weren't allowed to act in kabuki. Sort of similar to, the classic, in Shakespeare's day, all the women characters were played by men in drag, because, that was just how things were. There were bits of this film I really enjoyed. I found it very visually spectacular, just like this sort of period story of this young onigata performer who grows, and we see him through his entire career and his sort of rivalry with his trainer's son. It was interesting, but at the same time, there are a lot of bits of this movie that I just found kind of dragged. It's a long movie. It comes in at about over 3 hours, I think, and it's a lot of movie, and some parts were just, I don't know, they didn't feel like there was any sort of dramatic tension or weight to them, and I was like, this is a 3-hour movie. But I did enjoy the rivalry, and it sort of was the centerpiece of the film, and I really enjoyed the performances. The performances were so lovely to watch. As someone who, has never been to Japan, doesn't know too much about Japanese culture, I'm not even really like an anime person or anything like that. Despite that, I found it really fascinating, and it really made me sort of understand the love of this sort of thing from a different culture that I have no understanding of. Like, I got it for 3 hours. However, I don't know, there was a lot more that I feel like this film could have done. I personally would have liked some more exploration of sort of like how being an onigata performer is affected by gender roles. It felt like gender was weirdly absent from the film, and that was really not helped by the female characters being so 1D. And I'm not talking about the direction. But parts of it were really joyful to watch, like truly like wonderful experiences. And I don't know, I think there's some magic in there. I just think it's a big ask to watch a free and change movie that has a lot of parts that kind of, not have me looking at my phone, because I'm a good girl and I don't look at my phone when I watch movies, but wishing I was looking at my phone, which is kind of worse. Next up, we have Benny Safdie's The Smashing Machine, which was once again nominated for Best Hairstyling and Makeup.
How did that happen?
I completely understand this one. They basically transformed The Rock completely into this MMA fighter called Mark Kerr, and the story is sort of a period of his life, kind of going from when he's on top of the world to following him on a sort of downward spiral of drugs and relationship problems. It's all kind of classic biopic stuff.
Get out of here, Dewey.
What are y'all doing in here?
We're smoking reefer.
And this one does some interesting sort of like finding ways around that. It manages to avoid a lot of the really heavy-handed biopic scenes that I kind of expected from it, but it doesn't really make up for those with anything too interesting, unfortunately.
After 3 boring minutes, The Rock says, know your role and shut your mouth!
The Rock's performance is really good, and I was actually quite impressed with it, because I'm not really a huge fan of The Rock as an actor. He's charismatic, but I don't think he's ever really done anything that's made me sort of stand up and say, hey, that guy can act.
So shut up, bitch!
But I think the film kind of suffers from kind of the opposite of what made Kukuho good, which was kind of selling me on the magic of this sort of cultural experience. It doesn't make MMA seem very interesting. Mark Kerr as a fighter, as far as I understand, was basically like good, but really boring. You would kind of just get people on the ground and hit them a bunch, and people didn't really like watching that.
Advil?
Yeah.
And centering the film around him kind of makes it hard to really like find any interest in MMA or any reason to enjoy the experience. There's also the fact that a lot of the film is actually about the men's struggles of his wife, Emily Blunt. And she's really good, but it kind of makes him less interesting. He kind of is the sort of the boy keeping her afloat, and it kind of means that his storyline isn't too fascinating to me. There's a sort of descent there, and I guess is dramatic, but I don't know, I don't really care about any of it. It felt a bit inert to me. Though there were some interesting ideas, and you know, if you're into MMA or you want to think that The Rock doesn't suck, maybe it's worth a watch.
My big strong man, I love you.
Next up, we have another Best Makeup and Hairstyling nom, The Ugly Stepsister. Now this, to me, is like a really cool nomination. This movie is a Shudder original. Shudder is the entirely horror-based streaming service that doesn't really seem like it would be fit for spitting out Oscar contenders. But they've had some good movies in the past few years. Skinamarink is a big one that I think has really kind of changed the perception that Shudder isn't just putting out the sort of like basis level crap. There's some good stuff in there. The basic plot of this movie is it's sort of a retelling of the fairy tale of Cinderella, but from the point of view of one of the ugly stepsisters. Although this ugly stepsister is of course played by an attractive woman, but we'll ignore that for a minute and pretend that they aren't doing the classic Hollywood, oh, she's got her hair up in her bun and she's wearing glasses. That wasn't planned, I promise.
Take off your glasses.
I think they do a good enough job of that. Like, the makeup and hairstyling in this movie is spectacular. And then you kind of have this story that's very body horror focused. It's the ugly stepsister basically making herself more and more beautiful by the standards of society at the time, by having a lot of horrifying procedures done to her. It's really gross. Like, as someone who watches a lot of horror movies, has seen, you know, gallons of blood, all sorts of disgusting things on screen, I was hiding my eyes and kicking my feet at the ugly stepsister. There was some stuff in there that really made me retch, and I was like, I felt sick afterwards, and that doesn't happen for me. I'm not someone who engages with films to that degree very often. So I found it quite a, you know, exhilarating experience, and to have this, you know, to imagine these stuffy old Oscar voters having to watch this movie to decide if it has the best makeup and hairstyling is kind of hilarious.
That's my third monocle this week. I simply must stop being so horrified.
I'm glad as well, between this and The Substance, we're using body horror to kind of explore these female issues and ideas of beauty standards. It feels like it fits so well in body horror. But a bit like The Substance, which I also loved for its, you know, special effects and pushing grossness, I kind of wished there was more nuance to it. It feels very on the nose. But I guess it's just kind of sad that this didn't get like a visual effects nom, because visual effects is so focused on CGI, because the effects outside of the makeup and hairstyling, a lot of the gore effects and a lot of the gross things that go in and out of people's bodies are really impressive and really deserve an accolade. This is a film I would really recommend though, if you like horror, if you like gross stuff, if you like feeling gross.
I've lost my mind.
Next up, we have The Lost Bus.
There's a situation developing at Ponderosa Elementary. There are 23 kids who are stranded. Is there anybody in the area that can pick them up?
This is a visual effects nom. An Apple original. Apple have been really trying to win Oscars for a while now, ever since they launched the Apple streaming service. Obviously, Coda won Best Picture in a weird year, but still it feels like they are probably the streaming service that's most gunning for Oscars. But this doesn't really feel like an Oscar play. This is a disaster movie based off some real California wildfires that happened a few years ago, which I think is kind of an uncomfortable mix. I love disaster movies. I'm a big fan of Roland Emmerich's work, not the person, but the films that I would watch when I was a kid. There's something really engaging about watching this very human struggle of survival, and the sort of spectacle around it.
Didn't we agree that we weren't going to have any sweets until after the election?
Back off, Jane.
But basing it in a real disaster makes it feel kind of gross. Like, it's hard for me to really sort of take in the visual spectacle and be like, wow, look at them surviving, when I know it's a real thing that really happened. It kind of makes it too close to home. It also takes a long time to get going. There's about 45 minutes before the disaster really kicks in, and it's not particularly interesting. Matthew McConaughey and America Ferrera are sort of the two leads. America Ferrera isn't even introduced until basically the disaster starts happening, and McConaughey is just kind of doing a very standard McConaughey performance.
I can't believe I got paid for that one.
He's a single dad, and his mother's sick, and he's got this job that he doesn't like, and he's chill, but he's angry, and he's, working class. I don't know, it didn't really engage me on that front. But once the film got into being a, movie about people running from fires and stuff like that, they basically have to take this school bus full of school kids out of this massive wildfire that's destroying an entire town. It was enjoyable when I could sort of get past the idea that, like, people really died. But I don't know if I can get past that idea, and I feel very mixed about this film. It's, in the British parlance, it's a Sunday afternoon ITV2 movie. Avatar: Fire and Ash. First of all, I want to tell you about this new religion I found. It's called the Church of Varang. I am feral for Varang. I'm in the cinema, I'm barking like a dog, I'm scratching the seat in front of me. I'm, just rolling around, loving Varang.
What do I want? Some bracelets and everything. I see you.
Played by Una Chaplin, this sort of evil, fired Navi, who is the, I don't know if you'd say secondary villain or the co-villain of the film, but otherwise this is an Avatar movie. Of course, nominated for Best VFX and for Best Costume. I found that a bit interesting because, not many people wear costumes in this movie. They're mostly CGI people. So I don't know what drove that, but I don't know. They look good, so that's all right. This is the third Avatar movie. I feel like if you don't know what Avatar is at this point, you're probably not going to care for it.
Will anyone back me up if I say this is ridiculous, or is it going to be another Avatar situation? I love Avatar. I think it's a Jesus Avatar. Okay.
These are sort of James Cameron's big blockbuster movies about humans going to this planet called Pandora. There's a race there called the Na'vi who are very sort of Native American coded, and it's a bit weird, but you're supposed to support them. They're fighting colonialism. At this point, you like them or you don't. You know if you like Avatar movies. I've always had very mixed opinions of them. I found that there are bits I enjoy, like there are bits in like Avatar 2 especially, and that I really enjoy, and there are bits in this movie, like Na'vi world building of these, there are these cloud people, and of course there's lots of stuff with the whales that I find really interesting, but at the same time I find that every time it cuts to the humans being sort of Power Rangers villains, and that it really loses my interest.
The strength of the ancestors is here.
I do like how much of this movie is about deciding if you should kill a kid because he's harshing the vibe of your family. I think that's a really interesting direction for the biggest blockbusters in the world today to take. But I don't know, it was fine. I'm not going to go through the plot of it. It's an Avatar movie. There are humans, there are Na'vi, there are big battles. It's all right. Like I say, if you watched Avatar and you didn't care, and if you somehow after that watched Avatar 2, which a lot of people did, it made very many millions of dollars, and you didn't feel anything, you didn't care, I don't think you'll get anything out of this one. It's not doing anything new. But if you're like me and you find elements of the world building interesting, or you find parts of the movies engaging, you'll find stuff to like in this one. It's not any different in that sense.
Has no dominion here.
And now we're going to move on to the second part of this video, where we talk about the best animated features. Kicking us off, we have Disney Pixar's Elio, or as I'm going to call it, Leo.
Got him!
This is kind of another Pixar movie in the worst way possible.
Elio, skipping school. I don't know if this is boundary testing or sleep regression or which one of these is you?
I don't know, but I think that one is you.
I mean, I guess it's cool to cut out all the gay stuff. That's really sick.
Don't turn that gay-ass music on. You punch me because I'm gay?
But I don't know, this film really did nothing for me. As someone, you know, I grew up with Pixar. I love those classic Pixar movies, and I'll even enjoy, you know, them now when they're good. But it just kind of swept over me. This is basically about a kid called Elio. He's obsessed with UFOs and aliens, and ends up getting abducted by aliens because they think he's the leader of the planet. He then becomes friends with the son of an alien warlord, and they have to sort of negotiate this whole alien politics situation. It's got fun moments. I like the friendship a lot between Elio and the alien. I think it's really sort of cute, so that's something. But nothing in this movie really stood out to me, nothing really grabbed me. I watched it, and then it was over, and I wasn't watching Elio anymore. I don't want to say if you've got kids, they'll like it. You might like it. It's a Pixar movie. You know, Pixar has a certain baseline of quality that I don't think they dip under too often. But I'm kind of over it. I don't know, maybe Toy Story 5 will win me back over, but at the moment, Pixar just isn't doing much for me.
Hi, Dad. I'm a bargaining chip.
No, say the other thing.
Oh, help me, Father. He overpowered me.
Disney Pixar's Elio.
Next up, we have Arco, or maybe we could call it Echo.
Got him!
I feel like I should like it more because I really feel the need to defend 2D animation in a world where it's so rare, but much like Elio, this one didn't do much for me. The animation's very fluid and sometimes it's beautiful, but the story felt very nothing to me. It felt kind of like one of those anime movies that was sort of not necessarily break through in the West, but you'd see trailers for in the summer and you'd be like, oh, it's one of those anime movies, I'm going to watch it and I'll have a good time. And, you know, I watched this and I had a sort of vaguely good time, but that was pretty much it. I don't like that I'm being so negative about animation.
Okay, Kyle, you're being negative Nancy. Stop it.
But don't worry, I did like some of the animated movies this year. This one, I just kind of have nothing to say about it. The kid wears a rainbow coat, he flies back from the future to still the future, but less the future, and befriends a little girl, and their friendship is sort of the central basis of this movie as they have to run away from robots and people and so on and so forth.
And so on and so forth.
And if you love animation in a way that I don't, if you kind of have that next level, like just appreciation of seeing good animation, and that is enough for you to love a film, I think you'll probably get a lot from this. The animation is spectacular at times. It just isn't enough for me to enjoy what I found to be a bit of a bland experience story-wise. Next up, we have Little Emily, or The Character of the Rain. This is a film about a very young girl, about 2 years old, whose family has moved to Japan.
I'm an otaku, which is another word for anime freak.
And it's sort of about this very, it's not coming of age necessarily, but sort of coming of childhood, sort of becoming a child from being a toddler. There are parts of this film that are really fun. I definitely enjoyed this more than the previous two we talked about. The animation to me felt more unique and interesting to look at and had more like cool moments where it went to strange places, and I found the humor in this a lot more to my liking. There's a kind of dry a acerbic quality to it, and it really makes it stand above a lot of animated films, which can be a bit too, you know, I don't want to say basic because that sounds very mean. I enjoy that sometimes, but very simple in their humor. This has a bit more bite to it. Not much, but a little bit more. I like the sort of storyline of it being about these transplants to Japan, and I like the period aspects of it, the sort of reckoning with post-war guilt and anger and all this sort of stuff. There's, you know, something in there, but it's all from the eyes of a very small child who believes she is God.
Memories last.
Next up, we have Zootopia 2. This is Disney's big hit of the year, and, you know, you can see why.
Welcome to Partners in Crisis. I'm your therapy animal, Dr. Fuzzbee.
Disney have taken this weird position of being better than Pixar. When I was a child and a teenager, it was Pixar's great, Disney movies, they don't know what they're doing. Whereas now it feels like Disney more consistently put out films that are sort of widely considered good, whereas Pixar feels like they're really struggling. Much like the first film, this really surprised me with how sort of thematically deep it was. Thematically deep compared to what I expected, not necessarily compared to, you know, like some sort of big drama. But a movie about powerful people weaponizing prejudice to force mass migrations and cover up for other horrible crimes feels really pertinent right now. And that's a lot for a movie aimed at kids. This movie is also fun. Like, it's a good time. The fox and the bunny, they have good chemistry. I enjoy watching them. And the jokes are actually pretty funny. Like, it's maybe back on that idea of basic humor, but these are delivered well and they made me laugh. But unfortunately, I did have to read about how caked up Judy Hopps is, and that's pretty much put me off of everything forever. So this film must receive -5 stars.
Reptiles ain't that different.
Finally, on our trip to the animation ghetto, we have K-pop Demon Hunters.
It's time.
This was the big animated film of the year. Zootopia 2 was close, but I feel like this one was just everywhere for a while. And that led to me completely avoiding it for a long time and only watching it when I decided to do this video. And I was pleasantly surprised. The Sony Pictures animation style, as I guess we'll call it, that we've seen with the Spider-Verse movies and the latest Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, is really fun to watch. The kind of mix of 2D and 3D, kind of getting the best of both worlds. You get the more cartoonish elements of 2D, and then it's hard for a 3D animated film to really pull off because they're too realistic. But you also get that sort of smoothness and ability to be more cinematic. Big quotation marks, animation can of course be cinematic. That ability to have a more, you know, filmed style, like a real movie. Once again, I'm doing big quotation marks if you're not watching for whatever reason. Yeah, I had a really good time with it though. The songs are great. The characters are all sort of charming and lovable, and I can see how this is going to be a franchise. Goes on for many, many years, sells lots of toys. I can't really sell it. I feel like you could take one look at K-pop Demon Hunters and you know if you're going to like it or not. So either you watched it already and I'm wasting your time, or you're not going to watch it and I'm wasting your time. Next we move on to the above the line but not quite Best Pictureies. This was a lot of the stuff that I didn't think I would enjoy, or just hadn't got around to watching, that this kind of spurned me to do, and I had a lot of fun with this section. There's a lot in here that I got a lot out of, and I'm excited to sort of blow the trumpet for. And there might be one or two pieces of crap as well. First up, we have Song Sung Blue. Play the clip.
I agree that Neil Diamond is real music.
I'm not a songwriter, I'm not a sex symbol, but I am an entertainer.
So despite this being about something that I find really lame, being Neil Diamond and Neil Diamond impersonators, this film actually won me over to a certain extent. It was very charming. I think it wouldn't have worked as well for me if it had been about something I actually, thought was cool and liked, because it wouldn't have had that kind of charm of like, it's these plucky people later on in life who are just finding a passion and sharing it with the world. You do have to listen to a lot of Neil Diamond songs, which is iffy. I live in England. I've been to a pub. I've heard Sweet Caroline. But like I say, the lameness is actually kind of good. It's sort of cheesy in a way, and it's digestible. But I will say that this is one of a few movies this year that had a big genre change in the middle, and I did start to struggle more with the movie after that big genre change. Without spoiling it exactly, the movie sort of moves from being charming and fun to a lot grittier, and I find it doesn't really have the dramatic weight to handle that super well. But Kate Hudson, who is kind of the centerpiece of that dramatic change, is really good. I can see why this got her a Best Actress nom, because she really does everything that you expect from an Oscar-nominated performance. She, cries, she has these big outbursts of emotions, she lies in bed and stares at a wall. It's kind of everything that I feel like they look for when they say, what's a Best Actress? What's a best representation of woman acting? But while we're here, I would like to salute King Princess, who was in the movie as Hugh Jackman's daughter and had such incredible sapphic energy. I spent the entire film thinking she was going to seduce Kate Hudson's daughter, and I was actually quite surprised when it didn't happen. And I don't think that was in the script, and I don't think the director intended it. I think she just had that. I think it was just being fired directly out of the screen at me. And it worked.
Are you good? Are you ready?
It was huge, baby.
The voice of Hindrajab. This is a movie I don't want to talk too much about as a movie. This movie is about the ongoing genocide that is currently happening in Palestine, and it's really well made. The acting is incredible. The basic premise is they use real recordings of a phone conversation of a young girl in a car during an attack by the Israeli army, calling for help. And it's really brutal and really hard to watch. And I really just want to take this time to say that what Israel is doing is horrible. And really, please just take time to support Palestine however you can, whether it be through charitable donations or just speaking up and making sure people don't forget, whatever you can do, because it's horrible. If I had legs, I'd kick you.
Mommy, the bathroom has water in it. Go quickly!
This is a movie I loved. This movie only got one nomination. It's for Rose Byrne as Best Lead Actress, and while that nomination is so well deserved, she is so good in this movie, I honestly think it deserved a lot more. This is a movie that is so brilliantly about the pressures and pains of motherhood and being a mother when maybe you weren't supposed to be or don't think you were supposed to be. I don't want to go too into spoilers of it, because honestly, I would highly recommend you check this movie out. But I'd like to highlight Rose Byrne's performance, kind of playing woman in the middle of a nervous breakdown.
Women on the verge of a nervous breakdown.
Put under all these pressures and struggles, there's a really interesting sort of choice where her daughter, who is going through a lot of medical issues, is never seen. You only hear her voice, so it's always she's just off camera. And I want to shout out the script, which is so razor sharp funny. It's that really sort of cutting humor that is exactly my jam. I'd also say this is one of the few movies that I would actually call Lynchian, as in the style of David Lynch, and not because it's weird, although it does have some weird moments. What I'd really want to shout out about it is that it has that beautiful David Lynch quality where every character just feels slightly too aggro. Every character is slightly off, slightly too aggressive, slightly too willing to, be a dick. And that to me is the real heart of David Lynch, is that kind of like little writing change where everyone's slightly off. This has that, and I really loved it. There was also something much like The Ugly Stepsister. It was so goddamn gross. It really had me going in a way I don't usually do. And that's impressive for a movie. Honestly, should have got a Best Script nom. Maybe even should have been in contention for Best Picture. It would be in mine, personally, but there you have it. It's a Best Actress nom movie. It's kind of, the Oscars can sometimes have a women's issues ghetto where they put films like this that sort of center women's struggles in an interesting way.
Everything is under control.
From that to another film that I think has been incredibly snubbed this year, Weapons.
This is a true story that happened in my town.
Amy Madigan is great in this movie. It's a truly brilliant villain performance, and I love her.
I'm Gladys.
And Aunt Gladys is my life. But the fact that that is the only nomination Weapons got is kind of absurd to me. For those who don't know, Weapons is a movie about a town where a classroom full of school children disappeared one night at 2:17 in the morning, and sort of the emotional and cultural fallout from that. And honestly, I think this movie is a masterpiece. The genius of Weapons to me is that it manages to capture so much like American zeitgeist, or, I'm an outsider to that, but I would say how I see American zeitgeist, whilst also being a great horror movie. You can watch Weapons and you can just, turn your brain off and watch a movie that is incredibly entertaining, really funny, really engaging, great scares, great jumps, great moments. But it also captures so much about school shootings, this American fear of what are my kids being taught, the insidious nature of child abuse hiding in plain sight, unseen. And it also manages to work in, how people in positions of authority are kind of driven to abuse that authority to maintain it. Don't know why that would be relevant nowadays. But I think it was really impactful when it came out. This was a movie people were talking about. This was a movie that was driving people to see an original movie at the cinema. It was not a sequel, it was not a franchise. And honestly, I think it was snubbed for Best Picture, Best Script, probably more Best Performances maybe. Just a lot. It really felt like it deserved, and felt like it was kind of pushed to the side because it was horror, because it was kind of a blockbuster even, that people just didn't respect it. And trust me, we're going to talk about Best Picture. There's a couple of them we could drop.
This is where the story really starts.
And third in our trio of movies that have probably been snubbed for more awards than they deserve, It Was Just an Accident. Nominated for Best International Feature, this is an Iranian film basically about a man who captures a man he thinks tortured him when he was being held prisoner by the government, and sort of goes on this quest to find other victims and kind of be like, is this the guy? I don't know if it's the guy. I feel like it's the guy, but I'm not certain it's the guy. And sort of bringing in all these different characters who all have different perspectives on the situation. There's a lot of dark humor to it. There's a lot of conflict. It's a very enjoyable film. There's a lot of moments of not exactly joy, but humanity and bonding that feel very real. And I would definitely say that if you were just going to watch one film that was nominated for Best International Feature, I don't know, you don't like subtitles that much, I guess, I would definitely recommend that you watch this. And once again, without going too much into the sort of third act and spoiler territory, because this is one you should watch and enjoy. This film really nails not really having a genre change, but such a subtle descent into this really dark final act, this really like hellish final act, I'd even go so far to say, that you don't really register that the movie has completely changed tone and become something so horrifically different. I also want to say, and this was like, you know, a lot of people said this, but the final shot of this movie is so spectacular. It's something that sticks with you for a long time. It was just an accident. 1000% I would recommend you check this out. Next up we have Sirat. This is another international feature nom. This is a Spanish film set in Morocco that follows a father and son who are on the search for their daughter/sister. And they're going to these raves out in the desert in the middle of Morocco. Meanwhile, it seems like there's sort of political upheaval happening in the background that we don't get too much knowledge of. And the film sort of focuses on them following this sort of punky group of ravers to one final party in the desert in one sort of desperate attempt to find their daughter/sister. I really loved the first half of this movie. It's this sort of trance-like journey through the desert. There's a lot of like subtle bonding between the father and son and the ravers, and it's just really enjoyable to watch. It really sort of bucked my expectations in that first half, because I kind of had this idea in my head that it was going to be a very intense film, and there were intense moments, but it wasn't really that. It was more meditative, despite having all this EDM music and being very sort of loud. The problem is, this is another case of a sort of, not exactly genre change, but big upset in the middle of the movie. And that second half really lost me, unfortunately, after I'd been really loving it. Once again, not going too much into it, because I definitely think that there are people who will enjoy this film, and it's definitely worth watching. The second half kind of becomes an exercise in misery, and I found it a bit too hard to swallow, and I found it not necessarily pointless, but if anything, this is the point. And maybe it's a film I need to sit with more. Maybe in 6 months, a year, 10 years, I will come back to Sirat and I will love it. But right now, I really just feel like it lost me in that second half, and I really, really was disappointed by that ending.
Eso es el desierto.
And the final film in our above the line but not quite best pictureies is Blue Moon. In this film, Ethan Hawke plays one half of a famous songwriting duo. He's a real guy from the past. And I can see why the Oscars really liked this film, but to me it was so honk shoe coded. Totally just Z's coming out of my mouth. I don't really care for this kind of movie that's about like a showbiz guy. I can see why people were impressed by Ethan Hawke's performance. He really transformed himself. He got that surgery where they like break your legs to make you shorter, I believe. But I don't know, this didn't do much for me. It's all kind of set over one night, all within this one bar. And he has some interesting relationships. His former songwriting partner, Andrew Scott, is very interesting. And this sort of young woman who he's in love with, played by Margaret Qualley, is really sort of impactful. But a lot of the stuff around that is just witty repartee. And look at this guy, he's sad. I don't know, I didn't really get much from. I don't really have anything else to say about this movie. I guess I'll just kind of show you my notes. So yeah, that's what I thought of the film.
I mean, I'm in love with her, but everybody's in love with her.
It's time for the main event of the evening. That's right. It's time for our Best Picture nominees. First up in the Best Picture category, we have Formula One.
So you like straight talk?
Straight as an arrow, no sugar.
I've been asked to read a quick statement by the Formula One company, and just this is what I've been asked to read. You thought F1 was unk and Brad Pitt was cooked? Well, you couldn't be more wrong, no cap. Brad Pitt is totally daddy in F1 chat. He's absolutely Chad-maxing, spiking soy boy Damson Idris's cortisol levels by aggressively carmogging him. And thus ends the prepaid segment of our programming. I don't know, there were cars, and the cars went fast. If you like fast car noises, maybe this is the movie for you. F1, if you couldn't tell, is a movie about Brad Pitt. Basically being the coolest guy ever, coming back from years of not doing F1 racing, from doing other sorts of car driving jobs, to take an F1 team to victory. I think what I really struggled with in this film is basically that it's about sort of jacking off Brad Pitt and making someone who is sort of notably a real life bad person, like very specifically playing up the idea that like cool old movie star Brad Pitt is gonna come back and he's gonna put everything to rights. Yeah. The race scenes were really impressive. I saw this film in IMAX, and you know, me and the friend I saw it with both came out of it like, you know, it was cool racing. You know, we understand now George Lucas's obsession with just seeing cars moving. But it's a very two-dimensional story. There isn't much given to anybody other than Brad Pitt, who is, of course, treated as the coolest guy ever. And that's hard to really enjoy. And even aside from noted bad person getting sort of glazed in a way that feels very like meta and specifically about glazing Brad Pitt as older movie star who lends his star power to Hollywood, it's kind of absurd that this movie got a Best Picture nomination. There are about 5 different movies that I've talked about already that would have really earned it this year and were really sort of spectacular and said a lot about society. And a movie that's a commercial for Formula One, like a movie that is specifically about selling you the idea that Formula One is cool and that we should all be watching it, feels kind of gross to give like a award like this to. Obviously, winning Best Picture means nothing. It's a stupid industry award. It's all made up bullshit anyway. But it's just kind of a fun, well-made corporate slop movie with a bad guy as its lead who's being glazed. Would not recommend. You can probably watch like a condensed 20-minute version of all the racing scenes on YouTube. So, as long as it's not giving them money, I'd say go for that. Next up, we have Begonia.
Good morning, Corey.
Good morning, Michelle.
This is a film directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, adapted from a South Korean movie called Save the Green Planet. And it's basically about these two conspiracy theorists. Well, one conspiracy theorist played by Jesse Plemons and his sort of innocent brother kidnapping corporate girl boss Emma Stone because they believe she's an alien. And then the sort of tension of like Jesse Plemons trying to get her to admit that she's an alien who's controlling the planet. I guess the first thing I'd say about this is that it's kind of insane that the director of Dogtooth, Yorgos Lanthimos, is now like pretty much a guaranteed Oscar nom every time he makes a film. Like, it's really kind of surprising that a guy who is a certified freak is getting Oscar nominations like pretty consistently now. Is kind of like a favorite of the Academy. And that's really interesting because Yorgos is kind of on a weird halfway point in terms of sort of popular culture, I would say. There's sort of like a respect for him, but I feel like as well, some people are kind of tired of him, and then you obviously have a lot of people who maybe think he's too artsy-fartsy, so there's a lot of people he doesn't please. I liked this film, but I would certainly rank it sort of middle of the table for me in terms of Lanthimos. I'm a big fan of The Favourite. That would probably be my favourite of Yorgos Lanthimos' works. And this felt a bit kind of, I don't know, it didn't really have the really acerbic kind of like dark comedy that I expect from like a top-notch Lanthimos. These sort of incisive insights into sort of like human psychology and these explorations of extreme personalities and sort of like very specific and exaggerated cultural situations, which I really expected from this film because it felt like such a perfect premise for Lanthimos to explore. Stone and Plemons are great, and like the interplay between them and the tension between them is really well done, but it kind of feels deflated. It feels like it doesn't escalate in a way that is enjoyable. And I think what it really suffers with is basically the film is about the question of, is Emma Stone an alien, or is Jesse Plemons making stuff up? And it reaches a point where you're like, well, it has to be one of those two options. I won't spoil, but it has to be one of those two options because otherwise this film has no dramatic weight to it at all, and there's nothing interesting that happens. So when you get that twist, it feels kind of pointless, and you kind of, I don't know, and you don't get much from the film before that to make it interesting. It's not bad, like I say, I enjoyed it. I sat in the cinema and I had a good time, but it didn't wow me as much as I expected. And I know once again we're with Best Picture nominee that I maybe would have rather seen something like If I Had Legs I'd Kick You or It Was Just an Accident over it. Train Dreams.
Beautiful, ain't it?
Train Dreams is a movie about a guy who is in the past.
And so on and so forth.
This is one that, I don't know, I half connected with. There were parts of this movie I really liked, but there were parts of this movie that did absolutely nothing for me. This movie stars Joel Edgerton as a logger, and I'm not talking about no footage logging, I'm not talking about no edit houses here, who lives through sort of the end of the 18th century, beginning of the 19th century, and sort of seeing the perspective of the change of those times and sort of like this industrialization of work and the sort of cruelty of the times he lives in through the eyes of this very small cog in the world, but sort of seeing how he has a negative impact on the world, even if it's in such a minor capacity. And I think that's really interesting, and I'm always down for stories that are about sort of like a regular person's point of view. I think we as a society are too obsessed with the great man theory and sort of telling stories about big historic figures who everything must have been so important around them because they did important things. So I was very interested in the premise of this, and I wasn't entirely against the sort of style and tone. This movie is very slow. There's a lot of narration, a lot of silence. It's not really about plot. It's very much just this guy lives his life and we follow him over a long period of time, like over most of his life, basically. And sort of see the interesting bits and the tragedies that befall him. And there were parts of that I enjoyed. I really enjoyed the sort of like family and relationship parts early on in the film. But this is another great example of there's a big point in the middle. And after that, the film becomes very much about like a sad guy being sad. It does look spectacular. And like I say, there were lots of bits I enjoyed. But at the same time, I kind of felt too divorced from... It feels like there's a kind of recurring motif of he's on the outskirts of like this violence of the American frontier. And And it kind of feels like he's too divorced from that. Like, he has guilt about the things he has seen, but he doesn't feel too invested in them and too much a part of them. He feels like too much of a bystander. And then later on in the film, it doesn't feel like there's enough of a sort of turn of like seeing, civilization and law come into this previously wild frontier. Like, we're seeing anti-Asian racism and we're seeing frontier justice, but from very outside perspectives. And Joel Edgerton doesn't have much interesting observations about them or reactions to them. I will say, though, I did really love the ending of this film. It's a bit cheesy, but it's exactly the sort of ending that a film like this needs. It's just a very simple, emotional uplift. And like I say, I did think the themes were interesting. It's just a very thin spread on a very dry piece of toast. Also, a disappointing lack of trains.
Every bit of it.
Finally, some good fucking food. The Secret Agent is a movie I kind of don't want to say too much about.
Essa é a pessoa. Eu quero buraco na boca.
Because it is a film you should go and watch. You, yes you, person watching at home, find this movie. It is spectacular. All I really want to say is that the film is about Brazil in a time of fascist dictatorship and has a brilliant central performance by Wagner Moura. This movie is a lot of times not what you expect it to be, hence not wanting to get too deeply into it, but it's a brilliant portrait of living under fascism. There's so much in this film that is about like people finding joy and sexuality and color in these really dark times, which are very vaguely defined in the film, but that really works to its advantage. You're seeing very much the lowest level of corruption and decay that happen because of the wheels of fascism. The other thing about it is, despite that sounding kind of depressing, it's a very enjoyable, entertaining film to watch. It's very engaging, even though it's kind of inscrutable. You don't really figure out what's going on until about halfway through the movie. And there are so many weird tangents and divergences that you wouldn't really expect. And there's also just a lot of humanity. Without going too much into it, several of the characters in the film are sort of people who are on the run from various horrible circumstances that arrive from the corruption and the sort of like ability for people to do horrible things because no one is stopping them. And seeing them sort of finding their lives and living despite these horrible circumstances is so simple and beautiful. There's also some bits that are absolutely insane, like really funny, comedic, over-the-top things that you would not expect in a film about darkness and fascism. And I would say this is a film that I really love because it contains so much. It's one of those films that I am such a big fan of, where the film does not feel the need to tell you how to think, tell you what to feel. The film presents itself, gives you so much to take away from it, so many different facets to find like depth and humor and warmth and beauty in. Like I say, go watch this film.
Não, mas eu sei usar martelo.
Next up, we have Hamnet. Hamnet is a film based off a book directed by Chloe Zhao, stars Jessie Buckley as William Shakespeare's wife, is sort of conceptually about the writing of Hamlet, but mostly isn't really about that. It's very much sort of like the story of Anne Hathaway, William Shakespeare's wife, and this sort of relationship between the worldly scholar and the sort of untamed, witchy woman of the woods. This is the film that I feel like for a while people have been trying to sort of typify as the villain, the Oscar villain, this sort of archetypal film that has been filmed some years by films that are villainous. Amelia Perez. But a lot of times, I don't know, people like to create narratives. That's why we make films. But people sometimes like to craft narratives about things that don't really exist. Hamnet isn't a villainous movie. It's flawed, maybe. The thing I really found with this movie is the dialogue, to me, for what sort of film it was, and the sort of visual beauty of it is so on the nose. It feels very much like it's telling you the emotion at all times, when it should be letting me just feel it through the story. The building blocks are there, and the two lead performances of Jessie Buckley and Paul Mescal are good and really emotive and engaging. So it feels weird to kind of have the dialogue be so blatant and explanatory and expository when it doesn't need to be. It's this kind of Netflix designs movies to be watched on a phone thing. In a way, it feels like we as a society are moving towards dialogue that is so easy and leaves no room for interpretation. A lot of the films I loved the most on this list are the ones that leave a lot of room for you to fill with emotion, whereas Hamnet feels very much like it's filling you with emotion, like stuffing a turkey at Christmas. But once again, I have to give this film credit. Much like Train Dreams, this film had an ending that pulled it all together for me. This is very much a it will work for you or it won't ending. Like, if you are too far out on this movie by this point, I don't think this will work for you. I was giving the film enough rope to kind of be pulled back in by the sort of emotional end point of the film. Partly because after probably the worst bits of dialogue in the entire movie, it then settles into this very emotive moment that just kind of lets you feel, and without spoiling too much, brings a lot of people together in a sort of moment of shared grief and feeling that is very powerful and feels very pertinent, both in the time of Hamlet being about this sort of post-plague people coming together and sort of all grieving, people they've lost through art and through story. And I did find that really beautiful. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we needed a whole movie about William Shakespeare inventing the Hamnet. Waka waka.
Bye.
Why?
Bye.
Why?
Much like Blue Moon before it, a movie that is kind of honk shoe pilled. Guillermo del Toro's epic adaptation of Mary Shelley's first in an entire genre work. But I don't know, this one didn't do much for me. I often feel like I don't connect with Del Toro's work. He's not really a director for me. I'm gonna try and change that. I admit that I'm not familiar with the films of his that people really love. I haven't seen Pan's Labyrinth. But a lot of his work, the Hellboys, Pacific Rim, Nightmare Alley, doesn't work for me, and I find really hard to sort of latch onto. I just want to say, not a read, not a diss. Lots of people love Guillermo del Toro, and good on them. He's, a visually stunning director who has very interesting ideas, but this is kind of a prime example to me of those ideas really not meshing with what's happening. I don't know, do I have to tell you the story of Frankenstein? Oscar Isaac plays Dr. Frankenstein. He's a mad scientist who creates a monster, played in this film by Cummy Barthwater himself, Jacob Elordi. And the film is basically about him creating this monster, and then regretting it and driving the monster out, and the monster then coming back for revenge. Frankenstein. I don't know if you've ever heard the plot of one of the most famous books of all time, but there it is. I think where this film really falls down for me is as a work of adaptation. Del Toro seems to really use this as a chance to write a treatise on daddy issues. This is Daddy Issues, the movie. Oscar Isaac has daddy issues and then passes those daddy issues on to Jacob Elordi. And I'm not really a daddy issues gal. There's a lot of expansion of the sort of middle section. In the book, Dr. Frankenstein sees the monster and instantly is like, oh no, I've made a mistake. And runs away. In this film, there's a big chunk dedicated to him raising the monster and kind of acting out his own trauma with his father of like impatience with the monster and, oh, you're not good enough. Why did I create you? And there's a big chunk at the beginning of the movie that is the same thing where Tywin Lannister is like, oh, you're a bad son, Dr. Frankenstein. I am sick of you. Also, his mum is played by Mia Goth, and then he falls in love with his brother's betrothed, who is Mia Goth. And of course, the monster's also in love with her. And once again, another big Oscar contender that feels like has very thinly drawn female characters, which extra sucks because it's an adaptation of one of the most famous female authors' works.
I'm a very strong feminist, so I believe women should have whatever mad thing they want.
So, yeah, as an adaptation of Frankenstein, it doesn't do much for me. And what it's trying to do, which is be a movie about sort of generational trauma, one, I'm kind of sick of it. There's a lot of movies about generational trauma at the moment. And you have to really do something special to stand out in doing that. This film doesn't really manage that, in my opinion. And I just think it's an adaptation that says so much less by expanding and saying so much more. Also, I just want to say, Del Toro sets are so beautifully designed, and then I always find them so badly lit. They always look so fake to me. And I find it really disappointing because I think they're so beautiful looking. I would love to stand in a Guillermo del Toro set. I would love to be in that room. But then I look at it on film and I often go, yeah, this is very flat. This kind of looks like a Power Rangers villain base.
You told me that monster was invincible!
Oh, Chalamet, can't you go 5 seconds without embarrassing yourself?
How long was that?
I have a purpose.
Okay.
Marty Supreme is a film about the titular Marty being a ping pong player in the 1950s and basically trying to sell the idea that ping pong is going to be the next big sport. It's sort of classic Safdie structure if you've seen Good Time and Uncut Gems. It's that kind of like guy goes through all these different situations and always manages to kind of dig the hole deeper and deeper. But this one also has sort of 20 minutes at the beginning and 20 minutes at the end, a kind of sports biopic. The film looks amazing. The period setting is so wonderfully realized. The performances are great. It kind of feels like Timothée Chalamet is born to play like the most annoying fuckboys in the universe. And I think artistically it feels like an expansion of the previous Safdie's works. This is obviously just directed by Josh Safdie, whereas they split up. And the split up and the story behind it kind of taints this film for me. Telling a story about a guy who will go to any lengths to fulfill his passion, and then finding out that the Safdies kind of did a lot of horrible stuff in the attempts to fulfill their passions, kind of makes the whole film feel, once again, a bit icky. And it sucks that we have to take this into account. And I feel like I've talked about a few films in this video from this kind of lens of the real world around it tainting it. But I try to avoid that unless it's very specifically. The film feels like an expression of that thing, that darkness in the creator or the person who's working on it. And this is a case where it feels like that, where it kind of feels like it's Josh Safdie telling the story of how he had a come to Jesus moment and rose above his previous like destructive behavior. Or in this case, you know, not protecting actors and young women who are on his sets. And so it feels icky. It feels gross for me to support that. And even though this is a film that when I saw it before all that came out, I did love it. This is a really enjoyable film to watch. It's really, like I say, beautifully shot, beautiful period design. But it was hard for me to get past that in the making this video part of my enjoyment of the film. So that kind of sucks. I guess I'm glad that this is the first Safdie brother movie I've seen where they have like a woman character who feels sort of well realized. That doesn't make up for the bad stuff.
You think it's that simple? Yeah, I do.
Next up, we have Sentimental Value.
Why didn't you want to do the role?
I watched this film about a week and a half ago. I really loved it when I watched it, and since then it has basically flown out of my mind. And that's maybe a bit of a bad omen for the film, which I did think was really impactful. This film is about a actress whose father is a film director, and he's attempting to reconnect with her by writing a script for her to star in. When she rejects him, however, he decides to go and hire Elle Fanning to play her role. They film it in their childhood home, and it's a lot about the sort of like generational trauma. We get a lot of sort of Skarsgård's point of view of his upbringing, and then that sort of trickling down into the upbringing of our main character. And what I felt like I really connected with was a sort of novel angle on this, which was generational trauma from the sort of point of view of the older sibling, younger sibling dynamic, the sort of dynamic of the older sibling protecting the younger sibling from the worst of the trauma and sort of being a emotional buffer. And I thought that was an interesting take that I haven't really seen on film, so I really connected with that element of it. And I thought Skarsgård was great, and the two daughters, as played by Renette Rienzwe and Igna Lilius, are both great as well. I also really enjoyed Elle Fanning's character in this movie as the American actress brought in by Skarsgård to sort of replace his daughter. And I feel like she's very sensitively treated. I really could see the version of this film where she's the dumb American who comes in, she's a, vapid and vain, but I like that she gets to be a very sort of thoughtful outside observer.
I play no favorites.
There you go. There you go.
I cannot be bribed.
Okay.
I have, unfortunately, no problem telling you that you are disqualified or it is a fail. Yes.
But this is a film that, to me, that kind of felt like it wrapped up too neatly. It didn't leave me with much, and that kind of meant it left very quickly. I was very into it when I was watching it. I had a very emotional ride with it, but I left and then it was done, and I didn't really stick with me in any deeper way. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think there are films that can do that, and there are films that can be really good for the time you are with them, and I think both of those are valuable and valid. But it's kind of left me going, Sentimental Value, yeah, it's a good film about trauma and the house and that.
And so on and so forth.
Best som har skjedd deg? Skulle vært der litt mer, da?
Now we are really into the big two, one battle after another. This was one of the biggest films of the year by a wide margin in terms of sort of cultural impact and taking over the film news cycle when it came out. This is a film directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, who is one of America's most sort of like beloved auteur filmmakers at this point. I feel like even though he's never made a blockbuster hit, and One Battle After Another still kind of wasn't, he's so sort of like respected. He can make a very big budget film, along with getting Leonardo DiCaprio in. At this point, how much more is there to say about One Battle After Another? It feels so pertinent and so of the moment. A film about a revolutionary who's freeing immigrants who have been unjustly arrested and put into camps to be deported. and then sort of having this big time skip and jumping to 15 years later and sort of focusing on this idea of being about what a revolutionary does when the revolution has passed them by. I think the strange thing about this film to me is it feels very political, but it kind of isn't. There's a kind of universality to this film that I think is very interesting. Like, it wasn't written specifically to be about these times. It's based off a book from the 70s. But I feel like what really works about this film is it's kind of an archetypal story. It kind of fits into any time period, any sort of like idea of people revolting and then sort of falling away from the revolution and losing the ability to really like change with the times. It's very much a story about growing old and being an old hippie who's maybe got some views that are a little bit out with modern society. And sort of how your responsibility shifts to be more about bringing up the next generation of revolutionaries, respecting them and supporting them. This is a story very much about Leonardo DiCaprio and his daughter. And it also really manages to be just a really incredible thriller. This is a proper edge-of-your-seat movie. In a way that I kind of don't expect from Paul Thomas Anderson, and in a way that feels a bit out there to be also this film about the political landscape of the time, and also this very sort of expansive story about growing old. This movie also, though I will say, does have some really incisive political commentary. The white supremacists in this movie are so funny. I was rolling on the floor, ruffle-coptering at some of the things that the white supremacists said. The main villains of this movie are the Christmas adventurers, and it's just such a silly premise, but also so fitting and so well observed of real far-right white supremacists. Like, the strange thing about them is they're so silly whilst being so dangerous. And this film really captures that these guys are so dangerous. The stakes are so high when they're around, but at the same time, they're silly. But there is just so much to this film. It's an epic in every sense of the word, and I do really love it.
Viva la revolution!
And our final film tonight, the film that got the most nominations at the Oscars this year, Ryan Coogler's Sinners.
We've been gone a long time.
And can I just say how lovely it is for a film that is a awards darling and a box office smash to be about people of colour talking about eating pussy and killing vampires. A film that manages to work so completely as a genre film. It's not a horror movie in the sense that it's scary. I was never really scared while watching this movie, but it's an aesthetic horror movie. It's a Buffy the Vampire Slayer horror.
Think of something cool. Tell him I said it.
Its horror trappings in maybe more of an action thriller zone, but that is perfect. I love that kind of movie. I love that that is a kind of movie that people can enjoy, that we can get a film that is gory and has vampires in it and is about the supernatural in such a real and specific way. This is a film that has so many moments that have stuck with me months later. I saw this film in cinemas when it was released, and my brain is a bit like a sieve, in that most things leave it. The only things that really say are Doctor Who and Resident Evil, and this film doesn't have either of those. I still remember moments so specifically and so beautifully. The first appearance of Haley Steinfeld, the juke joint dancing music scene, which is maybe the best scene from any film this year to me. The film scene from 2025 that will stick with me for a long, long time. Everything with Jack O'Connell. I'm so glad that Cook from Skins is like a guy who's in big movies now. And it's just such a thrilling, enjoyable ride. I place a lot of value on the kind of blockbuster that can be smart and thoughtful and make you think about colonialism and African American culture living within the larger United States, and music and how music is cultural and so much part of our culture and is co-opted and stolen, whilst also being a film that is so engaging on a plot level. These characters are so lovable and I'm so engaged by them. All I want them to do is survive to the end of the night. And some do, some don't, but I'm so engaged. I also want to say Michael B. Jordan's performance is incredible. You've probably all heard the stories by now, and that he's making the two twins different by wearing different sized shoes, and one has dimples and one never has dimples, and all these little performance tricks. And it's showy, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. He does such a good job of it, and the special effects surrounding it. They hand each other cigarettes, and in those moments you just go, oh yeah, movies are magic. You can make one guy two guys. And I just want to say, this film is such a banger, and I'm so glad it did so well. Truly just a success story on every level. A film that Ryan Coogler has a deal where in 25 years he's going to own the rights again. Something that should be Hollywood standard. Of course, studios don't like that and probably aren't going to give that to many filmmakers. But it happening is amazing. And it being a genuine box office success, an awards darling, something that will stick in our culture for a long time, will be a well-remembered movie that people point back to and say, Sinners was amazing. I need to show you Sinners. If you didn't see Sinners, we're sitting down and watching Sinners. And I'm just so grateful that we got that and so many other good films this year.
That ain't your brother.
So that's it. That's the 28 Oscar-nominated films I watched this year. I consider myself a bit of a cinephile, but I admit that equally, I'm not nearly on the level of a lot of cinephiles. If you look at my letterboxd, you'll see there are big periods of time where I've become obsessed with Dark Souls and don't watch any films for weeks at a time. And I have a lot of blind spots that I'm trying to catch up on. For a long time, I was out on film. I had completely lost the passion for it. And this, in some ways, has really helped me keep that going. This as a project of watching all these Oscar-nominated films has really kind of like given me an appreciation for film and kind of reminded me of my love of different types of films. It was so nice to be forced to step outside of my comfort zone and watch a Song Sung Blue and find joy there, and to watch a The Lost Bus and find joy there, and then to watch a The Secret Agent or a It Was Just an Accident, which I, would have heard of and thought, oh, those sound good, I'll definitely get them at some point, and then not done that because I would have been playing all of the Resident Evil games in order because Requiem was really good. I think that's 3 Resident Evil mentions in this video. But it was really lovely to be pushed out like that and to watch some things that I wouldn't have watched and to find so much joy even in the things that I didn't love. To watch a Kakuho, which wasn't perfect and I had a lot of problems with, but had so many joyful moments that I'm really glad I saw. I don't know if I have much commentary on what this says about Hollywood as a whole. It's interesting that films like Begonia and F1 were nominated for Best Picture. It feels very fractured. It's exciting how many international films were represented this year. Interesting things like The Ugly Stepsister and Kakuho, which didn't get big nominations but were nominated in craft categories, where it feels like quite often those can be dominated by American films, probably because there's a lot of, my mate worked on that, I'll nominate that. But in summary, would I recommend you watch every Oscar-nominated movie? No. It's a lot of work. You watch a lot of movies that you don't love. But I would definitely recommend, half taking on this challenge. I would definitely recommend finding some way in your life to expand how you watch movies and force yourself into a position where you have to watch something you wouldn't usually watch, because it really can remind you why you love film. It's so easy to forget and kind of be just like, I'm just ticking this off so I can put it on the letterboxd, or I'm just ticking this off so I can say I've seen every film by this director, or I'm just ticking this off so I can talk about it with my friends. And it's sometimes easy to forget that the magic of film is being transported away and being told a story. And sometimes you have to subvert yourself to remind yourself of that. So find a way to do that this year, maybe. But will I do this again next year? Maybe. Partly, if people watch this video and want more of it, I'll do it again. As a personal thing, if this video goes nowhere, maybe I'll look at the nominations next year and say, hell no, But I want to believe that I can push myself outside my comfort zone, and I want to believe I could do this again. I've been MJaded. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. What were your favourite films of last year? What were the movies that you would want in the Best Picture run? What were the movies you thought got snubbed? So, yeah. Interact with this video so it spreads, and I'll see you all soon, maybe.